Today's noisy digital-first world is a challenging one for business owners. How do you get more people to know you, trust you, and to respect your brand? How do you stay front of mind with your target audience, as well as talked about in a positive way in the marketplace? The answer is public relations, but not as you know it. Get ready to unlock the potential of your business through the power of PR, content, and digital communications. Get ready to become your own PR machine.
Trevor, just dropping in here for a quick introduction, and I say that because this interview with Sallie Jones, who's a small business owner, a dynamic small business owner here in Australia. I think you'll love her story. What she's doing with social media is amazing. So if you run a business and you're interested in how social media can work for you, then you'll get a lot out of this episode, I'm sure. Now, why I'm saying it's a pre-introduction, because we recorded this the other day, but in the interim, something's happened with Gippsland Jersey, which is Sallie's company. It's a milk company, a milk brand, and I just wanted to add this in because it might give you a little bit of context when you listen to the full interview. But long story short, Sallie and her business partner, they run a thriving boutique milk brand. It has just been taken off the shelves of one of Australia's biggest retailers. And when I say big retailer, we've got two really massive retailers. And so, they don't make enough margin on it, so they've just deleted the line from their stores. Now, of course, this is a massive story, a massive deal for a small business, of course. And Sallie told her following on social media about this. Everything blew up. Social media lit up. Her support was amazing. And it got through to the media, and she's been on radio and TV and interviews and press and everything since. So I just wanted to drop that in because I think it's quite important when you listen to the story, and I'm giving it to you now without any context, but have that in the back of your mind that there's been an issue that Sallie's brought to the fore, i.e. her milk brand being taken off the shelves of a major retailer. She put it out on social media, so she is the media channel in that regard. It got picked up from the traditional media, plus her supporters and her online community really rallied to the fore as well. So we don't know where that story will end, but at least you've got a little bit of a story. I'm starting backwards, so now we'll get into the interview. Alrighty, welcome back to the Become Your Own PR Machine podcast. My name is Trevor Young. Got a very special guest today. I like seeing people who are out there doing stuff, and PR, digital communications, creating content on social media, joining the dots and making it work for their brand and their business. And I like to show that when you do this stuff, things happen. And Sallie Jones from Gippsland Jersey, I'm calling you now you're not even a budding milk brand entrepreneur. You are a bona fide milk brand entrepreneur. Is that what you call yourself? What do you call yourself?
Hi, Trev. Look, I have never called myself that, and I've never been called that. I've been, but I love it, and I'm going to adopt it. I love your creativity
brand
there.
Entrepreneur. There you go. You can take that one to the bank. Walk us through this story because, as I just mentioned, you're doing stuff. You're out there. You're kicking goals. You're passionate about your brand and your business, but also about connecting with people, building relationships, and this is growing your brand. And I don't think you use any advertising. You might do a bit, but we can unpack that. No advertising. So this is all organic, folks. We're getting out there and making things happen. So everything we talk about here on the podcast, Sallie does. So let's start at the start. We go back a little way, Sal. So just probably set the scene for a bit of context, and then let's move into your letter story.
Yeah, look, I'm a Gippsland girl. I grew up in Lakes Entrance on a dairy farm, and when I moved to Melbourne to do my university studies, I had to do an internship in public relations, and I didn't know anyone. I wasn't connected at all. And I happened to rock up to Spark Impact in Richmond and introduce myself, and Trevor and his business partner, Richard. I don't know, there was a very quick conversation, and the next day I found myself sitting at a desk, and they said, pack your bags, you're going on the road, you're going to deliver this Grid Girl competition. I had no idea what any of that meant, but I just said yes and rolled with it. And it was a glorious, 2 years I think I was with you,
Two,
Trev?
if not a bit more, yeah. And yes, very much a can-do attitude. We had a role for you. You fit straight in, and yes, on day one we sent you up to Brisbane, halfway across the country, and for an event that we were doing for Foster's, the beer brand, and Grand Prix. So that takes us back a little way, but that's your obviously your background. You then moved into sort of more account coordination, account management, and that side of things. Just quickly bridging, because once you left our agency, which was called Spark Impact at the time, once you left that our agency, what did you do then before becoming, bring us into the current day with your milk brand and your new business?
Sure. So when I was working with you, Trev, I was supplementing my income by by having a stall at the Melbourne Farmers Markets on the weekends as a side hustle, because my dad at the time, as a dairy farmer, had been cut off by the milk company, and he was throwing milk down the drain. So I felt like I had to contribute to the family a little bit. And my pop used to drive down at 3 a.m. and meet me at Collingwood Children's Farm, and I'd set up and do market stalls. And it was within that time that the raw milk movement was starting. There was a guy that came out from America called Mark McAfee who had a raw milk company, and they held a town meeting. There was a raw milk movement, and they held a town meeting. I think it was the Collingwood town hall. And he basically said, raw milk's obviously illegal in Australia, but if you want to access it, find a dairy farmer and tap them on the shoulder, and that's the only way you're going to be able to get it in Australia. And he made a call. There's about 400 people, as I said, and he said, have we got anyone in the room that has access to milk? And I was, as much as I'm an outgoing person, I wasn't necessarily comfortable anyway. I forced myself and I stood up, and he said, this is the woman that you need to speak to. And then I was mobbed by so many people wanting access to this milk. And I called Dad. I remember I jumped in my car and I thought, holy moly, this is an opportunity here. And Dad said, well, why don't you come home and pack your, we'll put this brand in your name. You don't own anything. Doesn't matter if you go to jail. Who cares? You'll start a cosmetic bath milk company. So that's what we did. And I was really grateful because I'd had the exposure through Spark to see how brands utilised and leveraged media stories and journalists to talk about their brands. And I'd made a contact through Richard Cornish, who is a food writer at The Age. And he was my first contact. I actually called Richard and I said, I'm going to start this milk brand. It's called Cosmetic Bath Milk. It is not for human consumption. Would you do a story? And I pitched myself in. And because I'd had that relationship with him coming to the farmers markets as well, we'd built this relationship. And as I've realised in life, everything is about that relationship. Authentic relationship. And he backed me and he did the first story, and we had rolling it out, and it was an amazing opportunity, and it really sort of, I guess, helped our family at that time to navigate that space.
Yep.
I had married a guy from the city who swore black and blue he was not moving to East Gippsland, and after about a couple of years he decided that he'd had enough and wanted to move back closer to the city. And I thought I better do the right thing. And that's when I said to Dad, well, look, this is where this chapter ends for me. I have to now sort of move on and do something else. And at that time, I felt like maybe that was the end of the whole dairy story for me. I thought that was it.
Yeah.
I'm done. Went off and did a couple of other things. Went to Mount Baw as their marketing PR girl. Never been to the snow for a day in my life, and rocked up on my first day of the job, and it happened to be snowing. And I thought, do I walk from the car park to the office, or how do I deal this? So I was the perfect person because it's a beginner's mountain, so I was really able to put myself in those shoes and communicate, I guess, in that job as a first-time person to the snow. So that was fun. I had 3 children in 3.5 years. I started the Warragul Farmers Market because I had this amazing mothers group, and community was high vibes, and just some really capable mums, and we all kind of got together and created that.
So just for people who aren't in Australia, and even for the top end of Australia, probably don't know Gippsland. Gippsland's stretches from Melbourne to the east, and you were about 3 to 4 hours drive away originally where the farm was, and then moving closer in a place called Warragul, which is not too far away from Melbourne, but still in prime dairy country, just outside of Melbourne.
Yeah, it is. I had the 3 kids, had the market, and I'd set up a little PR marketing consultancy with another mum in my mum's group, and it was a little side hustle. And we were doing some great little projects, launching new estates, rolling out food initiatives and all that kind of stuff. And life was going along quite well. It was fun. It was in that time that my dad had come down with depression and psychosis, and it was very concerning, and we really went on that journey as a family to support him. And it was, very, very tragic for us that he actually did take his own life in 2016, and that's when, for me, it was this lioness moment of going, I'm not going to accept that his life stops here. He was such a pioneer, such an entrepreneur in that dairy space, so bold. And he has an amazing story. No one even knows his story because it's not documented. But, he built a brand. He built multiple brands. So one was his ice cream brand, Riviera Ice Cream. So milk cows made ice cream, and we had ice cream shops. So that was my upbringing. And then as well as that, he built a milk brand called Riviera Hometown Milk. And he was literally milking the cows, processing the milk, bottling the milk, and delivering the milk, going into Woolworths, clearing the shelves and putting himself front and center and not taking any shit from anybody. Like yeah, and I saw that. Like, I wasn't super observant, but I saw it, and it was probably very influential in my life, and the style that I actually am rolling with in my life now. And everybody really, I think, enjoyed and loved my dad. He was a natural storyteller, and quite bold. And so when he died on that day, I was so tragically heartbroken and sad about it, but inside of me, in my absolute deep gut, I knew that something good was going to come out of this, and I had no idea. No idea. But then it was a couple of weeks after that my dad died that the dairy crisis happened, and my friend Steve Ronalds, who is a dairy farmer in Jindivick, and his family, his uncle had started Jindy Cheese up years ago back in the day when my dad was starting up as well. He was like questioning, why am I doing this if I'm going to be disrespected by the industry, and I want to actually take some control around my milk price.
What's the dairy crisis? What, just quickly, what was that entail?
Yeah, so one of the big companies, which was Murray Goulburn, there's a number of large companies that take the farm's milk and consolidate it, and then they sell it or they process it into milk powder or whatever. So dairy farmers are price takers. So you can't set your price in Australia. You have to accept whatever the milk company tells you they're going to pay you. And they set their price in the start of the year. And then what happened with Murray Goulburn is that they changed their mind, and they said, oh, actually, what we said we were going to pay you, we're not. And dairy farmers don't work like that. They forecast and budget their whole year's milk check, and they usually have already spent it before it's come in. But that's just farming life and how it rolls. So financial pressure in anyone's life, but especially farmers, because they are playing in big numbers, and there's a lot of a lot of things at hand, is very, very tragic on mental health. And in that time, like, we experienced, and I heard and knew of people that were suiciding in that time in our rural communities because the pressure was so high. A lot of men's worth are caught up in their identity of farming, or their finances, or their relationships break down, and it's just a pressure cooker. And so Steve and I had about 3 or 4 cups of coffee, not really knowing each other, but kind of did. And we came up and he said, well, I'd be keen to start a brand. I said, well, I would be too. And we came together with 3 pillars, and we decided over a coffee that, 1, farmers had to be paid a fair price. The second one is around a commitment to creating social change in rural mental health. And the third one is kindness. And those pillars are our absolute foundation in how we choose to conduct ourselves and do our business.
And obviously your communications, your content, everything you do kind of falls under that. So when we hear about companies and purpose, and, there's a lot of cynical people out there saying, they poo-poo the whole idea, etc. But, it's been the driving force of everything you do, and it's really your brand, those things, that's what you become known for. So obviously you've got the milk. How does one start a brand then? I mean, obviously you need to, get other farmers on board, and how long did it take you before you got your first Gippsland Jersey branded milk sold? Who bought the
I know. It's so memorable, Trev. It's so memorable, and it's an unreal story. So when we decided, it was so my dad died in March, and we had milk in a bottle. We had the conversation in June, and I remember a just life-defining moment of like, this is happening, and it was like falling off the side of a cliff, because when you decide to do a business or whatever, there's no going back. You're free falling. You don't know what's going to happen. You're just rolling with it.
You're building the plane as you fall off the cliff.
Yep, that's right. And so I was full of grief. I was full of emotion, and I was very charged in that time. And we had milk in a bottle with it first, for sale in the September. So it was literally 3 months by the time we decided that we'd start something to having a finished good in a bottle with something to sell. Yep. And we launched that at the Warragul Farmers Market. And I remember I'd started up the Facebook page and the Instagram page, and it got shared so much. And I thought, wow, like this is we're going to have support here. And then on the day that we launched it, we sold 2,000 litres of milk out of the back of the truck. People lined up. Like, people don't line up in the country. You've got to understand, they just don't line up.
Well, people don't line up for milk. Let's be fair.
But the support and the love, and I was so overwhelmed, and I still feel that overwhelmed feeling of like, people would actually support us and get behind us. The way we were able to start that was just by starting up and testing the concept, because we didn't know if it was going to work.
It was called Gippsland Jersey back then?
Yep, we launched Gippsland Jersey with those 3 pillars that I said. So fair price for farmer, mental health, and the kindness.
So just walk us back, because this is no mean feat. How long before you went to that farmer's market and initially started to sell your milk, were you on Facebook? Yeah, on social.
I think we started, the first post might have been after we decided in that June. I'd have to go back on the ground, but I remember the very
first... a couple of months building. Do you remember how many followers you had at that time?
About 400. All my friends. So I send it out. Obviously, we all start with our friends and our family.
It's organic. It's, there's always a thing when people launch and, you keep it quiet, then you come out. But, and that's probably going back to our days in PR. You'd have the big reveal, but not anymore. I mean, the reveal now is that if you're going to open a restaurant, you'd be talking about it 6 months out, 8 months out while you're building the restaurant. And clearly you are telling your story and obviously talking about what our plans were, I guess, what your plans were, the pillars, the issues in farming, and that struck an emotional chord with people.
Yep. And look, it was a perfect timing with that dairy crisis in terms of launching this brand, because Australians in general were really wanting to support Australian dairy farmers, and they were like, what milk can we buy? We just want to support Australians. And it is unfortunate that all of those brands on the supermarket shelves are foreign owned, and the money's not staying in Australia. Yes, it's Australian milk, but they were disrespecting the dairy farmers.
Yep.
And so it was not okay.
So the story there too is that I'm actually quite interested to know, you had 2,000 litres of milk and you believed you'd be selling that, or is that just a wing and a prayer stuff? 2,000 litres. I mean, I don't know, can't even imagine how much that is, but it feels like 2,000 litres. Was that, did you feel there was rumblings that this was going to be good just from Facebook?
No, well, we had a minimum quantity that we could get processed at the contract at the factory.
It was 2,000.
So no, it was 5,000.
Oh, 5,000.
Yeah, and we remember the milk tanker going off, like driving down the road, and Steve and I going, like, this is so much money right now. Like, we don't even know. It was just one of those moments. You just got to trust it and you got to roll with it.
Yep.
And even just like, first of all, going back a step, going to the factory and convincing this man, John Gommans, that he should actually process milk for us was a massive deal.
Yeah.
And because, like, we know as our little business now, 8 years in almost, how many tire kickers and people want, ringing you up, say, oh, got this great idea, blah, blah, blah. So he could have, like, cancelled us out. We actually did do the rounds. We pitched our story and our idea to a number of milk companies, to the big ones. They were like, no, you're too little. No, you're dreaming, whatever. And I remember speaking to John Gommans in this meeting that we had for him to say, please, could you process our milk? And he sat back in his chair and he's like, laughed with just roared with laughter when I said that we were going to market this on Facebook, because he said, well, how are you going to promote this brand? I said, well, we're just going to use Facebook. And he just laughed and he goes, 7-day terms because you're going to be broke. and we just went, holy moly, what are we doing? But anyway, so on that day, 2,000 litres sold out of the back of the truck, and then we managed to get a bit of momentum, and all of those people are still our absolute solid salespeople, right? And then they lobbied their IGAs and their food works and their general stores. Anyway, we found out that we sold out of milk like within 2 days, and we were sending another truck off to get processed. So
fantastic.
That was the start. Yeah.
So I want to get into your approach now to PR, comms, content, digital, everything.
Mm-hmm.
But first, just so we can get a grasp, an idea of the size of the business. I mean, how much distribution, how many retailers have you got now? That side of things. Can you paint a picture of, because you do also sell direct as well?
Yeah, look, we're lucky that we are in the majors. We're in Coles and Woolworths, and
big grocery retailers.
Yep, and Ritchie's, supermarkets, IGAs, and then there's probably about 400 other stockists around.
So second tier and third tier.
Yeah, like a lot of food service, like a lot of those high-end restaurants, and now we're also pushing into New South Wales as well.
Okay, so crossing state boundaries, and yes, there's obviously specialty shops in that because you're a boutique brand. You're more expensive than the quick and dirty milk that the major retailers and grocery chains sell for. So it's in times of high interest rates, etc. I mean, people have to love the brand to be spending extra on it, because it is it is a premium brand. And you've also got cheeses and all sorts of how many other lines have you got apart from the milk? Got cream?
Yeah, we got cream. We started with just full cream milk, and then we've gone and we've just sort of been adding to that basket of dairy products. So we now have a range of light milk, unhomogenized milk with that cream on top. And that obviously comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes and bottles. Butter, cream, cultured sour cream or creme fraiche, buttermilk, ghee, And now we're sort of branching in and exploring what that cheese looks like as well. So it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot going on. Lots of learnings, and just, I guess, trying to cater for what the market wants. We're very much about the fat. We don't apologize for our fat. We don't apologize for our price. It is what it is. And yeah.
So let's get into the nitty gritty. You've built this brand now, and it's a mainstream boutique brand. Let's call it that, because you are available a lot of places. And if people don't understand retail, I mean, it's distribution, particularly when the shelf life is so short. So let's not underestimate that. You have to sell through. You can't just have something sitting on the shelf like a packet of biscuits for half a year or whatever. So you need to move. You need to move milk quickly, often. That's the name of the game. You're in a commodity business, but you've built a brand that means something to people. What's been your just overarching approach to how we're going to get our name out there to build brand awareness and brand affinity? Because I think awareness is one thing, but affinity is so important for you.
Oh, Trev, that's a great question. I every single day I am telling some kind of story on that social media page, and I have not spent $1 of advertising on any social platform up until a couple of years ago, and then we had a little play with some ads, but we're back to just switching them off because you may as well flush it down the toilet. Really, I think if you're going to do it, you just do good organic content, and hopefully it'll get a few shares and whatnot. I must give huge credit and thanks to the mainstream media, the Herald Sun, the Weekly Times. Like, there was obviously, so through Spark Times, there was a guy called Ian Gilbert at the Weekly Times, and he gave me so many shares of, free runs in that Weekly Times, which I'm so grateful for.
Which is a very, very much an agricultural newspaper in Australia, but it's national and it's big.
It's big, yeah. And, I still remember that very first story of the Herald Sun coming out, and I was feeling quite nervous about it. Obviously, there's two stories here. There's Steve, the dairy farmer, who has, lost $180,000, profit with his milk and blah, blah, blah. And then there's my story, who at the time, 8 years ago, we did not talk about suicide. And the journalist said, we're going to focus on your story. And I thought, hang on, this is maybe, like, I wasn't prepared. My family didn't even know I was starting this milk brand up. The story with me pouring this milk over with this cow was on page 3 of the Herald Sun, which was like, holy moly.
And for context, the Herald Sun probably had, in those days, probably a little bit less these days, but probably about 1 million readers, and owned by Rupert Murdoch, and a big player in our world.
So page 3, the word, was saying out there, dairy farmer's daughter, starting new brand, and the word suicide very sort of bold. And I just remember feeling, am I comfortable?
Yeah. How long was it before you started getting press? Because, when we talk about generating media, and I'm a big believer that, you've got to have the story for starters. So you did have a story. Just launching a milk brand by itself is not necessarily the story. No. But because of why you're doing it, it makes the story real. Obviously, it aligns with, some issues in society and what was happening economically. So it was kind of like a perfect storm from that perspective. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is also you were building and underbubbling. How long after you started the Facebook group or you started selling did that article come up?
Yeah, so it was, that happened in the August, like at the end of August. So we had the June, July sort of, what's the brand, the labels, the whole bit. And then, in the August, I thought, right, we need to start ramping up here if we're gonna be able to sell this milk. And they came out. And also I had, I think, Channel 9 and Channel 10. We had the ABC. I felt like every news station in Australia had covered this startup milk story, because as well, like, we wanted to be a good news story in the dairy industry, because it was so terrible and there was so much media and press around that dairy crisis. We'd also entered a drought as well, and it was just tough. It was just tough. And the media was looking for a good news story, and we were that. We just happened to be right time, right place for that. And a big part of that was actually me telling my own very personal story and about my dad. And I remember just sitting there, you know, my heart just thinking, wow, like I'm so vulnerable right now. I did, and I was still processing it for myself. And anyway, it was an amazing, I've really healed myself. Like I've really gone there. It saved me a lot in therapy. I can tell you that, Trev. I think a lot of journalists have got a lot of tears and all that kind of stuff, but I'm so grateful to the media for, you know, just, I guess, respecting that story as well, like as gently as they did too. So, yeah.
So I guess it all comes down to story and you know, a lot of people, business owners, they've got a product and they want to get the product known and everything, but there's no story to it. You've got to craft the story. And of course, you know, because you started the brand with the story.
Yeah, that was
the story actually started the brand. That puts you in a different position. But a lot of people, a lot of listeners, if they're running a business where they've been doing it for a long time, or they just started up or whatever, there's usually a startup story around it, the reason why you went out and did something. And never underestimate the power of that why you did something. You know, it's not very, you know, you get the people that I just want to make money and we've just created this product, and there's no story there often. But, you know, when there's a reason why people, you know, they rail against their, you know, that might be in the finance industry and they're a startup going up against the big banks, or it might be, you know, they're ex-corporate and we could see a better way to do this because our clients weren't being serviced well enough. And, you know, that's just a little message from our discussion right at this minute is, you know, dig deep for those stories, because that's what resonates. And no doubt I know you've, you know, community-wise, probably every meetup, every event, at conferences, you've been speaking. And this story, you're probably sick of talking about it, but, you know, the whole thing about, you know, you will get sick of the stories that you tell, because if you're telling them often enough, that means that you might just be cutting through. So that's certainly a learning I think that people can take from this. Let's wheel back to social media now. On Facebook, you got about 48,000 followers, and Instagram is pretty big for you as well with 18,000. You've got a little bit on YouTube and Twitter, but not doing too much on those two. So it really is the meta combo, the 1-2 punch of Insta and Facebook, which makes sense given your audience. Walk us through your strategy with that, your organic content strategy. How often do you post, and have you sort of got types of themes or pillars, content pillars that you adhere to? I know you've got your pillars of the business, and no doubt, you know, kindness and mental health, and that content over time will reflect all of those. But how do you approach social today? Do you have a content calendar? Do you wing it? Do you? Because I think people would be really interested to know. And how often are you posting?
I do have a content plan, Trev. You'd be happy to know, but
I am happy.
I'm very gut feel. So if I'm feeling something, I will just generally post it. If and I'm very in the moment, like I won't sit on things either. And I think that gives it more authenticity for me. I feel really good about posting something that's just happened or whatever. And I follow it up with a few stories to back it up as well. But generally I'll try, like in my head, I'm like, okay, so go mental health potential, like a mental health sort of story or something, product story, a retail store, and a farm story, and a factory story. Like they're sort of the themes I try and work within.
Yep.
It's not like that. It's quite out of whack. There's also another thing I try and run by is that we do have milkshake caravans, and we we go out pretty much every weekend still, because that old school marketing, I can't tell you, the being out there and getting them to taste the product, have an experience with our brand, see it, there's just something about that that's worked for us, and it's a big commitment. But I would recommend just, you've got to do the grind. You've got to get out there. You've got to walk the supermarket. Like, so often I'll just walk into a supermarket. Someone will have a bottle of my milk in their trolley, and I'll say, "Hey, thanks so much for buying my milk." And they're like, "What? What?" And I'll just spark up this conversation, and then often somehow that will end up on their social media, or they start talking about it or whatever. So that's been really cool. Just that very spontaneous, unpolished. It works for me because I'm not a perfectionist.
Sparks word of mouth.
Ignites word of mouth.
Mouth.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know how to do it any other way, but just being as it comes. So for example, just the other day, like, we're sponsoring this baking show, and I said to the man that is running the show, said, "Oh, look, I'll come out and I'll meet with you." I said, "Well, come out to the farm, and instead of sitting in an office and doing a coffee or whatever, we just lit a fire in the paddock, put the Billy tea on, made some damper, and then I thought, I'll just make a bit of social media about this too, right?" And so,
of course,
for me, it's not hard work. Like, I have so much content. I've got content coming out of my ears. I can make a story out of a conversation, and it's easy for me. I just wish that I probably had a bit more time to do it properly. Maybe I could do it better. But I don't. So,
well, it takes time. But I think what I'm hearing from you, Sal, is that, it is the responsibility. As you get bigger and everything, you probably want, what can we hand out? And I think people fall into the trap sometimes is, we need to hand out to someone to batch produce videos, and I'm a big believer in that, and I actually encourage my clients to do that, particularly when time is an issue. But I guess you're out and about and you're doing stuff, and I think that you make it. It shouldn't be a chore. It's your job.
Yeah.
As the leader of a business, and you are the face and the ambassador of the business. So most business owners are the face of their business. It's your job. Don't look at doing social or content or anything as, I've got to do this over and above everything I also do. It is what you do.
Yeah.
It is what you do. It's just as important, if not more, than, I don't know, taste testing, and I don't know what else you do day to day, balancing the books. But you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say is that it's part of the role, I think, of a business owner. And I've always been a believer. I always think the content falls into four buckets. It's like, there's either utility content, which is useful, how-to, educational. You probably do a little less of that, but expertise-based businesses and professional services firms often do a lot more of that. You probably educate people on how milk's, processed, and how we make the cheese through your stories and stuff. The other one is sort of a leadership content, and you're doing that through mental health and highlighting the inequities of the industry and the plight of farmers ongoing. So that I'd call that a kind of taking a leadership positioning, and the content reflects that. Then there's human content, which I think you probably over-index on, and is a reason why people are really resonating with your brand, because again, it's a commodity brand, and that's telling the stories, the human stories. You tell them of the farmers. You tell them, I'm meeting this person here. We're doing, as you said, every conversation, meeting people. You're taking people along for the journey, and you've done that human content from day one. And then promotional content, you weave in well, and people don't mind promotional content because it's supported and they've already bought in, so they want to know where you are and, you got a new product. But when people, if they do social just for promotional, it'll wear off really, really quickly.
I think people are savvy now. They know when you're trying to sell them something. And I, as much as I'm meant to be, sales, marketing, PR, and all of the things, I'm a terrible salesperson. But somehow we make sales. But I'm never like, hey, I'm never hustling hard to say, buy my milk. Like, I would never say that. That is your choice. If you want to support us, great. But that's just not my style. So I would rather just tell stories, and then if you like what you see, you like what you taste, get on board. But I will never be a pushy salesman, and that's the style of who we are. You're never going to say, yeah.
And so you've got a blog and you do highlight the farmers, so shining the spotlight on others in the community. Goes to provenance. This is where we get our milk from. So that's how many farmers have you got supplying to you now?
There's 5 farms that supply milk into our factory now. So,
Yep.
and look, it's a job they're a community of people as well that they need to be respected, and it's always a joke whenever a new farmer comes on board. So sort of almost picked up one new farmer every year in order to keep up with the supply, and they know what they're signing up for. They know that that I will probably show up to their farm and start videoing them, and it will end up on socials, and all of the other farming mates will have a crack and have a dig and all that kind of stuff. But they are part of our brand. Their photos are on the backs of the bottles with their little stories, and they're just as much as part of this as anybody. Yeah.
So good. And people buy into the backstory. They buy into the backstory. They buy into the provenance story. When you look at it, you're just telling. You're chief storyteller. And so you've got the blog. You've got a pretty decent email list, so you can communicate directly with people. I think you told me before. And just, people are happy to give you email addresses just to keep updated with things. So that's, I think you said there was thousands of that, which is great. And let's just get onto the earned media side and the media coverage. How many bits of coverage do you think you've had over? Just give us paint a bit of a picture. How often do you do media, and do the media come to you, or do you pitch them?
No, I don't actually ever pitch to them. We held events. So the other day we had an on-farm barista day, and I did just want to, generate a little bit of media. So I did just I just picked up the phone call, and they actually just came because I've built relationships with, various and then they tell the story, because I'm sort of thinking, well, I don't want to also be beating my own drum so much. I would rather the media tell my story than me tell it. But I think over the years since we started, which will be almost 8 years, we would have to have had thousands of free media, like TV, print, like the Landline came and did a
big TV show.
Yeah, the ABC Landline. It's a big agricultural, well-respected. And Pip Courtney came and spent 3 days with me, and that was probably I've had a couple of films made about, like, with my story in it, and it's been a ride. I feel like I'm getting a bit old on this space, Trev, to keep showing up and smiling, but I feel like, surely they're just going to get sick of Sallie Jones, and but I think as business owners, and if we're in the business of building brands, we need to keep creating new stories. And I think you taught me that, Trev. You have to keep reinventing yourself, and collaborate, or give the media something to talk about, because often those journalists are sitting back in their desks, uninspired, or the old school PR days where they used to get a lot of media releases may or may not happen. I don't know what that looks like now, but
yeah, well, there's less journalists doing more work, and they haven't got as much time to get out on the beat a lot of the time. So if you can give them a good story, and I think the thing is, it's about delivering the story. Here's a good idea. As you said, if you create something, so that barista day or whatever it was that you just mentioned, if you create something that's of value, then they might come. But so what I'm hearing is that just a small percentage would be coming up with an idea, doing it, and pitching it out to them, and it's as you said, it would be a visual thing to get them, a hook into it. But everything else, people come to you. Do they just come to you for the general story? Is that's still obviously permeating through, agriculture, lifestyle, general news, food, Epicurean? I guess we talk about vertical markets and interest categories. You cross those boundaries, and that's the thing. If you spoke to an agricultural newspaper or a TV show, is going to be it's going to be a little different and different tone, because you're talking to the industry versus a foodie magazine potentially versus a news story? Are you pretty adept now at switching between the tone of voice that you have to have and the angle of what you're saying?
Yes, because I realize that different media need different stories, and it's about giving them what they need and what they want, and it's offering value. So always providing good images, strong images, or whatever they want. And I always like a little level of surprise as well. So if they show up, then I won't tell them about whatever's. I'll give them enough, but when they get there, I'll over deliver. So
Yep.
they always know that if they show up to do a story or for me, that I will deliver. Like, I won't let them down. There's a trust thing there. And,
Yep.
the other day we won Australia's best milk. Like, that's a big deal. Like, it was the
Fantastic.
Logies of the dairy industry. And I didn't know.
The Oscar Award.
Oh, it was unbelievable. It was a week or so ago now, and I just posted a photo. I've just posted a reel on Facebook or whatever at 12:30 a.m. when I was coming home from it. A little bit late. There's spelling mistakes. Actually, you know what I did? I did a infographic on Canva, and I did the wrong freaking flag. Like, I put New Zealand flag instead of the Australian flag, and it was too late. It was gone everywhere. But you know what? Gippsland Jersey is not perfect. It's this is who we are, and it was too late to pull it back because it had already gone viral. And that next morning, like, the media started ringing, and they wanted the story. And as you said, like, I feel like Gippsland Jersey is its own little channel of media, and they just ring. If I post something and it sparks their interest and it's in line with whatever it is that's going on for them, they just ring. So yeah.
So there's a couple of things there for people to take note of. One, you've built relationships. That's really important. That's why it's called public relations. It's all about the relationship. It's about the story. So you've got the stories down pat and you give value all the time so they know. So you've built that trust. You go over and above. So obviously if there's a visual element to it, like TV, or they're going to take a photo, you make sure that they've got the elements to go with the story. And so you're over delivering there, and they clearly are following you now on social media, and you cannot get in a better position because you have become your own media channel through social and through blog and everything else that you do, that they will pick up on the story and come to you. So that's kind of like the perfect storm, I think, for you guys, is that's where things really can happen. But obviously you've, as you said, thousands potentially of editorial exposure over the journey. That's really built your brand, but you've had to show up, you've had to front up, you've had to continue to tell the story and put yourself out there when there's probably times when you didn't want to do that.
Absolutely. I just thought, this is not, I don't feel like I want to do this, but I've made sacrifices and I've just dug deep and done it anyway. And I think that's part of being a small startup business. You have to hustle hard, and you have to work, you have to show up every single day. And I don't like being the face of I would rather someone else, show up. I'd be happy just to be in the background, but it's just how it's rolled. It was never intentional. But yeah, having that face and being that story is the foundation. And I'm hoping that one of my kids will carry on the baton one day, and that I can step down from that. But at the moment, it's been so rewarding, and I'm just so grateful to our community and all of the media that got behind to tell our story, and then essentially people buying our milk. It's just been unreal.
So just finishing up, Sal, and thank you for telling your story, because it's a brilliant one. What are some tips for, business owners that probably are a bit reticent to put themselves out there, to get on social, to go deeper than the normal stuff that most people post, and to go deeper into their journey, deeper into behind the scenes, take people behind the velvet rope of the business, and just dealing with the media and approaching the media and just getting over the hump of doing all of that?
look, I think it has to start with ourselves. And if you're a person that's not comfortable or, a perfectionist or something like that, you'll really battle to be authentic because, like, I just shared that moment of like putting the wrong flag up on the Canva. Like, it's an absolute, if I was working for businesses, I'd be getting sacked, Trev. But I think it's just not being too precious, and that works for our brand.
Yeah.
And we've had that style and that voice of like authenticity all the way through it. But if you just have to be yourself. People, at the end of the day, just be yourself. And I don't think you can lose. That would be my number one advice. People see through all of the stuff, I think, these days.
Yeah. Yeah, there's certainly a swing. I mean, we're seeing a massive swing to TikTok and raw videos because people are sort of going off the crafted fake influencer type of thing. And really, that's what social media has always been. Going back in the dark days of 2007, 08, 09 and Twitter and social media, I mean, it was more about that genuine conversations, genuine stories, and just fronting up. And, your brand, and, you're authentic to the brand. So the brand, and in most cases, the brand is you are the brand. So there's no disconnect there. I mean, if you were just, this is the way I am, and the brand was super polished and everything, there would be probably a bit of a disconnect and you'd struggle. So, there has to be an alignment between who you are as a person and as a founder and a business owner, and what the brand stands for. So I think that there's a little bit of soul searching in that, but you get that alignment, and then you know what to go out with. And but as I said, telling stories is really good. Delivering content that's useful and helpful and interesting. And again, you're a different business than a professional services firm. But I think the same kind of rules apply. They're just nuanced. That's it.
Yeah, we all love the story. We are built for human
consumption. All right, well, if people want to... Yes. Well, I want people to check you out. I don't care whether we've got listeners in England and the US and in Europe. So just jump onto Gippsland Jersey. Now, we spell it Jersey. I think there's different ways of spelling, or maybe not. Gippsland, GIPP, Gippsland, jersey.com.au. Check it out. Check out Sal on Facebook or Insta, and say hello to her. And if you're in Melbourne and you are near one of her outlets, do buy her Gippsland Jersey milk. Thanks very much for spending some time with us here on the podcast, Sallie.
Thank you.